The discovery wasn't dramatic, no sudden blaring alarms or flashing lights. It was subtle, almost an accident. Dr. Eris Thorne, a relatively unknown radio astronomer working at a remote observatory nestled in the Chilean Andes, was calibrating a new array of antennae when he noticed it. A faint, rhythmic pulse, buried deep within the background radiation. Initially, he dismissed it as terrestrial interference, a stray signal from a malfunctioning satellite, or some clandestine military experiment. He meticulously checked his equipment, ran diagnostics, and recalibrated everything again. The pulse persisted. It wasn't strong, barely registering above the noise floor, but it was undeniably there, and it was coming from the moon. Eris, a man more comfortable with numbers and equations than with social interaction, spent the next few days consumed by the anomaly. He ruled out every known source of lunar emission, cross-referencing his data with existing astronomical surveys. Nothing matched. The signal was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Its frequency was unusual, its pattern complex, and its origin impossible. The moon, as far as anyone knew, was a dead rock, incapable of generating such a structured signal. He confided in his mentor, Professor Evelyn Reed, a veteran astronomer with decades of experience and a healthy dose of skepticism. Evelyn, initially dismissive, agreed to review Eris's data. After a long night poring over the readings, her skepticism began to erode. There was something genuinely strange about this signal. "It's probably just an anomaly, Eris," she said, her voice betraying a hint of unease. "Some unexpected interaction with solar radiation, perhaps. But it's worth a closer look." They decided to dedicate more telescope time to the signal, meticulously mapping its characteristics. They discovered that the signal wasn't constant. It pulsed in complex sequences, almost like language. A language no one understood. Over the next few weeks, they gathered enough data to be certain this was no natural phenomenon. Something, or someone, was actively transmitting a signal from the moon. The implications were staggering. They knew they had stumbled upon something that could change everything. But they also knew that revealing their discovery could unleash chaos. The world wasn't ready for this. They decided to share their findings with a select group of colleagues, trusted scientists and researchers around the globe, initiating a chain of quiet investigations. They needed independent verification before going public. The fate of the world, it seemed, might depend on it. The first domino had fallen, setting in motion a chain of events that would soon plunge the planet into a global emergency. The whispers started small, almost imperceptible. Erratic weather patterns dismissed as climate change anomalies, unusual animal behavior attributed to habitat loss, and technological glitches blamed on software bugs. Individually, these incidents seemed isolated, easily explained away. But as the lunar signal solidified from a scientific curiosity into a confirmed extraterrestrial transmission, these seemingly unrelated events began to coalesce into something far more disturbing. In the remote Scottish Highlands, sheep began acting strangely, huddling together in large groups, bleating incessantly at the full moon, and refusing to graze. Fishermen in the Bering Sea reported unusually aggressive behavior from whales, who were ramming into boats and disrupting sonar systems. Cities around the world experienced inexplicable power surges, causing widespread blackouts and crippling infrastructure. The scientific community, now privy to Thorne and Reed's initial findings, started to connect the dots. Dr. Anya Sharma, a renowned climatologist based in India, noticed a significant deviation in global weather models. Storms were intensifying rapidly, deviating from established patterns, and exhibiting unusual electrical activity. She initially attributed it to unforeseen feedback loops in the climate system, but the data simply didn't add up. When she learned about the lunar signal, a chilling realization dawned on her. Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley software engineers were grappling with a series of bizarre malfunctions affecting everything from social media algorithms to air traffic control systems. Code that had been stable for years suddenly started producing unpredictable results. Debugging efforts proved futile, leading to widespread frustration and a growing sense of unease. Whispers of sabotage and cyber warfare circulated, but the underlying cause remained elusive. As the weeks passed, the strange occurrences multiplied, spreading like a Contagion across the globe. The stock market plummeted, fueled by uncertainty and fear. Conspiracy theories flourished on the internet, ranging from government cover-ups to alien invasions. Social media platforms became breeding grounds for misinformation and panic. Governments, initially dismissive of the reports, found themselves struggling to maintain order. Emergency services were overwhelmed, infrastructure buckled under the strain, and the public's trust in authority eroded. The world was teetering on the brink of chaos, and the source of the unrest, the silent signal emanating from the moon, remained a mystery. The subtle anomalies had become a global symphony of discord, a prelude to something far more catastrophic. The whispers were turning into screams. The dam broke when the New York Times published a leaked internal memo from NASA detailing the lunar signal and its potential implications. The memo, intended only for high-ranking officials, painted a grim picture. The signal was real. It was artificial, and its effects on Earth were undeniable. The article, titled, "Moon's Message: Is Humanity in Danger?" went viral within minutes, igniting a firestorm of public debate and speculation. Initially, government officials scrambled to deny the report, dismissing it as misinformation and irresponsible journalism. But the scientific community, emboldened by the leak, rallied behind Thorne and Reed, demanding transparency and a coordinated global response. Prominent scientists from around the world held press conferences, presenting irrefutable evidence of the lunar signal and its correlation with the escalating global anomalies. Dr. Anya Sharma, the climatologist from India, presented compelling data linking the signal to the increasingly violent weather patterns. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, a renowned neuroscientist from Japan, revealed preliminary findings suggesting that the signal might be affecting human brain activity, leading to increased anxiety, paranoia, and irrational behavior. The weight of the evidence became overwhelming. Governments could no longer deny the truth. World leaders, facing mounting public pressure and the threat of societal collapse, were forced to acknowledge the existence of the lunar signal. A joint statement was issued by the United Nations, confirming the discovery and declaring a global emergency. "We are facing an unprecedented threat," the statement read. "An unknown signal is emanating from the moon, and its effects on our planet are becoming increasingly severe. We must put aside our differences and work together to understand this phenomenon and mitigate its consequences." The announcement triggered a wave of reactions across the globe. Some were relieved that the truth had finally been revealed, while others were consumed by fear and uncertainty. Religious leaders offered interpretations ranging from divine intervention to apocalyptic prophecies. Conspiracy theorists claimed that the signal was part of a larger plan orchestrated by shadowy organizations. The world was gripped by a collective sense of dread, a feeling that something profound and terrifying was about to unfold. The confirmation of the lunar signal had shattered the illusion of normalcy, exposing the fragility of human civilization in the face of the unknown. The global emergency had officially begun. The world held its breath, waiting to see what the moon's message would bring. The declaration of a global emergency acted as a catalyst, transforming simmering unease into full-blown panic. Supermarkets were emptied within hours as people hoarded food, water, and essential supplies. Long lines formed at gas stations, banks, and pharmacies, fueled by rumors of impending shortages and societal collapse. Cities became ghost towns as residents fled to rural areas, seeking refuge from the perceived dangers of urban centers. Social order began to unravel. Looting and violence erupted in several major cities, overwhelming law enforcement and emergency services. Hospitals were stretched to their breaking points, struggling to cope with the surge in patients suffering from stress-related illnesses and injuries sustained during riots. Communication networks became unreliable, further isolating communities and fueling the spread of misinformation. The Internet, once a source of information and connection, devolved into a chaotic battleground of competing narratives and conspiracy theories. Social media platforms were flooded with apocalyptic prophecies, claims of government cover-ups, and accusations of alien involvement. Fact-checking organizations struggled to keep up with the relentless flow of false information, and trust in mainstream media plummeted. Religious institutions experienced a surge in attendance as people sought solace and meaning in the face of existential uncertainty. Some religious leaders preached messages of hope and resilience, while others warned of divine judgment and the end of days. Cults and fringe religious groups gained traction, offering simplistic explanations and promises of salvation to vulnerable individuals. The global economy ground to a halt. Stock markets crashed, businesses closed, and unemployment soared. International trade collapsed as countries closed their borders and imposed travel restrictions. Supply chains were disrupted, leading to widespread shortages of essential goods. The world was plunged into a deep economic recession, exacerbating social inequalities and fueling resentment. Governments, already struggling to maintain order, faced mounting challenges. Political divisions deepened, hindering coordinated responses to the crisis. Some leaders called for unity and cooperation, while others exploited the situation for political gain. Stoking fear and division, international relations deteriorated as countries prioritized self-preservation over global cooperation. Amidst the chaos, acts of kindness and resilience emerged. Communities came together to support those in need, sharing resources and offering assistance to the vulnerable. Volunteers stepped up to fill the gaps in essential services, providing food, shelter, and medical care to those affected by the crisis. The human spirit, even in the darkest of times, found ways to shine through. But these moments of hope were overshadowed by the pervasive sense of fear and uncertainty that gripped the world. The moon's message had unleashed a wave of panic, threatening to tear apart the fabric of human society. In the face of global pandemonium, the United Nations Security Council authorized the formation of the International Lunar Signal Research Initiative, ILSRI, a multinational team of scientists tasked with analyzing the lunar signal, understanding its effects, and developing potential countermeasures. The initiative, headquartered in a secure underground facility in Geneva, Switzerland, brought together the world's leading experts in astronomy, physics, linguistics, psychology, and various other disciplines. Dr. Eris Thorne and Professor Evelyn Reed, the discoverers of the signal, were appointed as co-directors of the ILSRI, responsible for overseeing the research efforts and coordinating the scientific response. Dr. Anya Sharma, the climatologist who linked the signal to the weather anomalies, and Dr. Kenji Tanaka, the neuroscientist investigating its effects on the human brain, were also key members of the team. The ILSRI faced numerous challenges from the outset. Political tensions between nations hampered cooperation, with some countries reluctant to share data or resources. Logistical hurdles abounded, as researchers struggled to access state-of-the-art equipment and secure funding for their projects. The sheer complexity of the signal itself presented a formidable obstacle, as scientists grappled with its unknown origin, structure, and purpose. Despite these challenges, the ILSRI made steady progress. Astronomers around the world collaborated to refine the signal's characteristics, mapping its frequency, amplitude, and polarization. Physicists developed theoretical models to explain its potential effects on matter and energy. Linguists attempted to decipher the signal's complex patterns, searching for clues to its meaning. Psychologists and neuroscientists conducted experiments to assess the signal's impact on human behavior and cognition. They discovered that exposure to the signal could induce a range of psychological effects, including anxiety, depression, paranoia, and even hallucinations. They also found evidence that the signal could disrupt brain activity, affecting cognitive functions such as memory, attention, and decision-making. As the ILSRI delved deeper into the mysteries of the lunar signal, they began to uncover disturbing clues about its potential nature and intent. Some researchers speculated that the signal might be a warning, a message from an advanced civilization alerting humanity to an impending threat. Others feared that it could be a weapon, a tool designed to manipulate or control human behavior. The pressure on the ILSRI to find answers intensified as the global crisis worsened. Governments and the public demanded immediate solutions. But the scientists cautioned against rash actions that could have unintended consequences. The fate of humanity, it seemed, rested on their ability to unravel the secrets of the moon's message. The race against time had begun. After weeks of relentless analysis, the ILSRI's linguistic team achieved a partial breakthrough. Using advanced algorithms and neural networks, they managed to isolate and decode a small fragment of the lunar signal. The decoded fragment wasn't a coherent sentence or phrase, but rather a series of images, simple, abstract symbols that flashed for a fraction of a second before disappearing. The images were initially dismissed as random noise, but Dr. Evelyn Reed, with her years of experience studying ancient civilizations, recognized a pattern. The symbols bore a striking resemblance to hieroglyphs found in ancient Sumerian texts, depicting scenes of celestial events and mythical beings. She alerted the team, and a renewed effort was launched to analyze the images in the context of ancient mythology and symbolism. The researchers discovered that the images, when arranged in a specific sequence, told a disturbing story. They depicted a cosmic entity, a being of immense power and destruction, consuming entire galaxies. The entity was surrounded by symbols of chaos, darkness, and death. The final image in the sequence showed the entity approaching a planet that bore a striking resemblance to Earth. The discovery sent shockwaves through the ILSRI. The images suggested that the lunar signal wasn't a warning, but rather a herald, a prelude to an impending cosmic catastrophe. The entity depicted in the images was apparently on its way to Earth, and the signal was somehow preparing the planet for its arrival. The decoded fragments were immediately shared with world leaders, triggering a new wave of panic and uncertainty. Some leaders dismissed the images as abstract representations, while others saw them as a clear and present danger. The debate over the signal's true meaning intensified, further dividing the global community. The ILSRI, under increasing pressure, continued to analyze the signal, searching for more clues about the entity and its intentions. They discovered that the signal was becoming stronger and more complex, suggesting that the entity was getting closer. The psychological effects of the signal on humans were also becoming more pronounced, with reports of increased anxiety, paranoia, and even psychotic episodes. The world was teetering on the brink of despair. The partial decryption of the lunar signal had revealed a terrifying glimpse into the unknown, confirming humanity's worst fears. The question now was not whether the entity was coming, but how to prepare for its arrival. The countdown to the end had begun. The rising tide of fear wasn't just psychological. It was becoming demonstrably, physiologically real. Hospitals, already struggling with pandemic-level stress and resource shortages, now faced a new, baffling epidemic, signal sickness. Patients presented with a constellation of bizarre and often debilitating symptoms. Vivid, nightmarish dreams plagued their sleep, leaving them exhausted and disoriented. Many reported experiencing auditory and visual hallucinations, often featuring distorted images of the moon and the cosmic entity depicted in the decoded signal fragments. Cognitive functions deteriorated, leading to memory loss, confusion, and difficulty concentrating. But the most alarming symptoms were physical. Some patients developed unexplained skin rashes, lesions that glowed faintly under ultraviolet light. Others suffered from seizures, tremors, and muscle spasms. In extreme cases, individuals experienced organ failure and death. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, the neuroscientist at the ILSRI, led the investigation into signal sickness. He discovered that the lunar signal was directly affecting the human nervous system, disrupting brain waves and altering neural pathways. He theorized that the signal was somehow interacting with the body's electromagnetic field, causing cellular damage and triggering a cascade of physiological dysfunctions. Tanaka's research revealed a disturbing correlation. Individuals who were more sensitive to electromagnetic fields, such as those with certain neurological conditions or those living near high-voltage power lines, were more susceptible to signal sickness. He also found that exposure to the lunar signal amplified the effects of pre-existing mental health conditions, leading to a surge in cases of severe depression, anxiety disorders, and psychosis. The discovery of signal sickness added another layer of complexity to the global crisis. Not only was humanity facing an existential threat from a cosmic entity, but it was also battling a mysterious illness that was spreading rapidly and defying conventional medical treatments. The world's healthcare systems were overwhelmed, and the death toll continued to climb. Desperate measures were taken to mitigate the effects of the signal. Governments implemented nationwide blackouts, hoping to shield populations from electromagnetic radiation. Scientists experimented with various forms of shielding and countermeasures, but with limited success. The lunar signal seemed to penetrate everything, impervious to human intervention. As signal sickness ravaged the planet, the ILSRI raced against time to find a cure. Tanaka and his team worked tirelessly, analyzing blood samples, mapping brain activity, and searching for a way to block or neutralize the signal's effects. But the answers remained elusive. The moon's message was not only terrifying but also deadly. With signal sickness spiraling out of control and the decoded images fueling apocalyptic dread, the pressure on governments to act became unbearable. The ILSRI, despite its warnings against rash decisions, found itself caught in a political crossfire. Some nations, driven by desperation and fear, began to consider drastic measures to block or jam the lunar signal, regardless of the potential consequences. The United States, under the leadership of a hawkish president facing plummeting approval ratings, spearheaded the effort to develop a signal-blocking technology. The project, codenamed Project Nightingale, aimed to create a powerful electromagnetic pulse that would disrupt the lunar transmission, effectively silencing the moon. The scientific community, including many members of the ILSRI, vehemently opposed Project Nightingale. They argued that attempting to interfere with the lunar signal without fully understanding its nature and purpose could have catastrophic unintended consequences. They warned that the electromagnetic pulse could destabilize the moon's orbit, trigger geological upheavals on Earth, or even provoke the cosmic entity depicted in the decoded images. However, the warnings were largely ignored. The U.S. government, backed by several other nations, pushed ahead with Project Nightingale, driven by the belief that any action was better than inaction. A massive antenna array was constructed in a remote desert location, shielded from public scrutiny. The project was shrouded in secrecy, with only a select few officials and scientists aware of its true purpose. Meanwhile, Russia, under the leadership of a resurgent nationalist regime, pursued its own independent strategy. Rejecting Project Nightingale as reckless and dangerous, the Russian government secretly launched a series of satellites equipped with advanced jamming technology. The satellites were designed to blanket the Earth with a countersignal, effectively masking the lunar transmission and mitigating its effects. The ILSRI was caught in the middle of this escalating technological arms race. Thorne and Reed, desperately trying to maintain a semblance of scientific objectivity, pleaded with both the US and Russia to halt their respective projects and allow the ILSRI to continue its research. But their pleas fell on deaf ears. The world held its breath, bracing for the inevitable clash between humanity's desperate attempts to control the unknown. The decision to block or jam the lunar signal was a gamble of unprecedented proportions. A roll of the dice that could determine the fate of the planet. The consequences, whatever they may be, were about to unfold. While the US and Russia prepared to unleash their technological gambits, a small team of ILSRI scientists made a crucial discovery. Analyzing high-resolution images of the lunar surface, obtained from a network of space telescopes, they pinpointed the source of the signal. It wasn't emanating from the entire moon, but from a specific location within the Mare Crisium, a vast lunar plain. Further analysis revealed the presence of a structure hidden beneath the lunar dust. It wasn't a natural formation. It was an artificial object, a massive complex of unknown origin and purpose. The structure was emitting the lunar signal, and its location within the Mare Crisium suggested a deliberate attempt at concealment. The discovery of the hidden structure reignited the debate over the signal's true nature. Was it a beacon, a warning, or something far more sinister? The ILSRI, armed with this new information, urged world leaders to reconsider their plans to block or jam the signal. They argued that understanding the structure's purpose was paramount, and that interfering with the signal could have unpredictable consequences. But the momentum was too strong. The US, determined to proceed with Project Nightingale, prepared to activate its antenna array. Russia, equally committed to its jamming strategy, deployed its satellites into their designated orbits. The world watched with bated breath, bracing for the inevitable confrontation. In a last-ditch effort to avert disaster, Dr. Eris Thorne proposed a daring mission, a manned expedition to the moon to investigate the hidden structure. He argued that sending a team of astronauts to the Mare Crisium was the only way to obtain definitive answers about the signal's origin and purpose. The proposal was met with skepticism and resistance. A manned mission to the moon was a complex and dangerous undertaking, requiring significant resources and international cooperation. Furthermore, the political climate was too volatile, with nations distrustful of each other's motives. However, Thorne's impassioned plea resonated with a small group of world leaders who recognized the urgency of the situation. A coalition of nations, led by China, the European Union, and Japan, agreed to support the mission. A joint space program was launched, bringing together the world's leading astronauts and engineers. The mission, codenamed Project Icarus, was a long shot, a desperate attempt to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. But it was humanity's last hope, a beacon of light in the gathering darkness. The race to the moon had begun, a race against time and the unknown. The launch of Project Icarus was a moment of fleeting unity in a world fractured by fear and suspicion. Millions watched on television as the massive rocket, emblazoned with the flags of participating nations, roared into the sky, carrying a crew of 6 astronauts towards the unknown. But even as Project Icarus gained momentum, the fragile alliance that supported it began to crumble. The U.S., convinced that Project Nightingale was the only viable solution, refused to participate in the mission and continued to prepare for its electromagnetic pulse attack. Russia, wary of the U.S.'s intentions, maintained its jamming satellite network, further complicating the situation. As Project Icarus neared the moon, tensions between the participating nations reached a boiling point. Accusations of espionage and sabotage flew back and forth, threatening to derail the mission. The astronauts, facing immense pressure and uncertainty, struggled to maintain their focus and cohesion. On Earth, the effects of the lunar signal continued to worsen. Signal sickness claimed more lives, and the global economy teetered on the brink of collapse. Social unrest intensified, with riots and protests erupting in cities around the world. The fabric of human society was unraveling at an alarming rate. The astronauts of Project Icarus, aware of the chaos unfolding on Earth, pressed onward, driven by a sense of duty and a glimmer of hope. They knew that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. They had to reach the hidden structure on the moon, uncover its secrets, and find a way to stop the madness. As the lunar module descended towards the Mercurium, the astronauts gazed in awe at the alien landscape below. The hidden structure, visible now in stunning detail, appeared as a massive, geometric anomaly, a stark contrast to the natural contours of the moon. It was a testament to an intelligence beyond human comprehension, a silent sentinel guarding a mystery that could save or destroy the world. The landing was successful, but the challenges were far from over. The astronauts, equipped with specialized suits and instruments, prepared to venture out onto the lunar surface and explore the hidden structure. They knew that they were entering uncharted territory, and that the dangers were immense. But they were determined to fulfill their mission, no matter the cost. The next few hours would determine the fate of humanity. The world held its breath. The first steps on the lunar surface were tentative, each movement deliberate and cautious. The structure loomed before them. An immense monolith of dark, obsidian-like material, its surface smooth and featureless. It emitted a faint hum, a vibration that resonated deep within their bones. As the astronauts approached the structure, their instruments began to malfunction. Compasses spun wildly, communication systems crackled with static, and their vital signs fluctuated erratically. The lunar signal, emanating directly from the structure, was interfering with their technology and physiology. Despite the challenges, the astronauts pressed onward, determined to reach the structure and unlock its secrets. They deployed a robotic probe, equipped with cameras and sensors, to scout ahead and assess the potential dangers. The probe transmitted images of the structure's surface, revealing intricate patterns and symbols that defied human understanding. Suddenly, the probe went silent. The connection was lost, and the astronauts were left in the dark. They knew that something was wrong, that the structure was actively defending itself. But they had come too far to turn back. Ignoring the risks, the astronauts approached the structure and began to search for an entrance. They scanned the surface with lasers and radar, searching for any sign of a door or opening. After hours of fruitless searching, they discovered a faint indentation, a subtle anomaly in the structure's otherwise smooth surface. Using specialized tools, they carefully chipped away at the indentation, revealing a narrow opening. The air inside the opening was cold and stale, and it emitted a faint, metallic odor. The astronauts hesitated, knowing that they were about to enter the unknown. With a deep breath, they stepped inside. What happened next was a blur of confusion and terror. The structure activated, bathing the astronauts in a blinding light. Their senses were overwhelmed, their minds bombarded with alien images and sensations. They felt as if they were being ripped apart, their very essence unraveling. Back on Earth, Mission Control lost contact with the astronauts. The signal from the lunar module vanished, and the screens went blank. Project Icarus had failed. The news of the mission's failure sent shockwaves across the globe. Hope turned to despair, and the world descended further into chaos. The U.S., emboldened by the failure of Project Icarus, prepared to activate Project Nightingale. Russia, equally determined to implement its jamming strategy, readied its satellite network. The final act was about to begin. The activation of Project Nightingale was a spectacle of technological hubris. In the remote desert, the massive antenna array hummed with power, its dish pointed skyward. The electromagnetic pulse, a concentrated burst of energy, was unleashed, racing towards the moon at the speed of light. Simultaneously, Russia activated its jamming satellite network. A wave of counter-signals blanketed the Earth, attempting to drown out the lunar transmission. The world held its breath, waiting to see what would happen. The immediate effects were dramatic. The lunar signal wavered, its frequency fluctuating erratically. The global anomalies intensified, with weather patterns becoming even more unpredictable and technological systems malfunctioning on a massive scale. Signal sickness spread like wildfire, overwhelming healthcare systems and claiming more lives. But the most disturbing effect was psychological. As the electromagnetic pulse reached the moon, a wave of terror swept across the Earth. People experienced vivid nightmares, hallucinations, and psychotic episodes. Mass hysteria erupted in cities around the world, with riots and violence reaching unprecedented levels. It became clear that Project Nightingale had backfired. Instead of silencing the moon, it had amplified the effects of the lunar signal, driving humanity to the brink of madness. The U.S., realizing its mistake, desperately tried to shut down the antenna array, but it was too late. The damage had been done. The Russian jamming satellites, designed to mitigate the signal's effects, proved equally ineffective. The counter-signals only added to the chaos, creating a cacophony of electromagnetic interference that further destabilized the planet. As the world teetered on the edge of annihilation, the lunar signal grew stronger and more complex. The images decoded by the ILSRI became clearer, revealing the cosmic entity in all its terrifying glory. It was closer now, its presence looming over the Earth like a harbinger of doom. The failure of Project Nightingale and the Russian jamming strategy marked the end of any hope for a technological solution. Humanity had exhausted its options, and the future looked bleak. The cosmic entity was coming, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. In Geneva, the members of the ILSRI watched in horror as their worst fears were realized. Thorne and Reed, haunted by the failure of Project Icarus and the disastrous consequences of Project Nightingale, struggled to find a way to salvage the situation. But time was running out. The end was near. In the depths of despair, as the world hurtled towards its apparent doom, a flicker of hope emerged. The ILSRI's linguistic team, working around the clock, achieved another breakthrough in deciphering the lunar signal. This time, they managed to decode a longer, more coherent fragment. The decoded message wasn't a warning or a threat. It was an invitation. A complex set of instructions, detailing a specific sequence of actions that humanity could take to connect. To communicate directly with the cosmic entity. The message was fragmented and incomplete, but it offered a tantalizing glimpse of a potential solution. It described a process of aligning human consciousness, of focusing collective thought and intention, to create a resonant frequency that would match the entity's own. The discovery sparked a heated debate within the ILSRI. Some scientists dismissed the message as a cruel hoax, a final act of manipulation designed to lure humanity into a trap. Others argued that it was worth a try, that there was nothing to lose. Dr. Evelyn Reed, drawing upon her knowledge of ancient mythology and symbolism, recognized parallels between the decoded message and ancient rituals and practices. She believed that the message was tapping into something primal, something deeply ingrained in the human psyche. Dr. Eris Thorne, initially skeptical, was swayed by Reed's arguments and the growing sense of urgency. He realized that the message, however cryptic, offered the only chance of survival. He convinced the ILSRI to endorse the message and share it with the world. The message was broadcast on every available channel, from radio and television to social media and internet forums. It was translated into every language, disseminated to every corner of the globe. The world, reeling from chaos and despair, listened with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The message called for a global gathering, a moment of collective meditation and focused intention. It instructed people to gather in groups, to close their eyes, and to visualize a simple, abstract shape that was revealed in the decoded message. The symbol, it was believed, would act as a key, unlocking a connection to the cosmic entity. The world prepared for the gathering, unsure of what to expect. Some embraced the message with unwavering faith, while others remained skeptical and cynical. But everyone knew that this was it, humanity's last chance. The fate of the planet hung in the balance. The designated time arrived, and the world fell silent. In parks, plazas, homes, and temples, people gathered, closing their eyes and focusing their minds. They visualized the symbol, a simple geometric shape that resonated with an ancient power. The air crackled with anticipation, a collective energy building towards a crescendo. At first, nothing happened. Some scoffed, declaring the whole thing a sham. Others wept, succumbing to despair. But then, slowly, subtly, things began to change. People started to experience vivid visions, glimpses of other worlds, other dimensions. They felt a sense of connection, not just to each other, but to something vast and ancient. The lunar signal intensified, but its effects were different. Now, instead of fear and chaos, it brought a sense of peace and understanding. Within the ILSRI facility in Geneva, the scientists monitored the global phenomenon with a mixture of awe and trepidation. They observed a dramatic shift in brainwave activity, a synchronization of consciousness on a scale never before witnessed. The Earth's electromagnetic field fluctuated wildly, as if responding to the collective thought of humanity. Suddenly, a voice echoed in the minds of everyone on Earth. It wasn't a physical voice, but rather a direct transmission of thought, clear and unambiguous. The voice spoke in every language simultaneously, bypassing the need for translation. "We have been watching you," the voice said. "For millennia, we have observed your struggles, your triumphs, your follies. We have seen your potential, and we have seen your flaws." The voice revealed that the cosmic entity wasn't a destroyer, but a catalyst. It was a force of evolution, a trigger for profound change. The lunar signal was designed to awaken humanity, to challenge its assumptions, and to force it to confront its own limitations. "You are at a crossroads," the voice continued. "You can continue down the path of destruction, consumed by fear and division. Or you can embrace your potential, unite as a species, and ascend to a higher level of consciousness." The voice presented humanity with a choice: to accept its guidance and embark on a journey of transformation, or to reject it and face the consequences. The decision was up to them. The fate of the world rested on their collective will. The entity's message hung in the air, a silent ultimatum that reverberated through every mind on Earth. The world was faced with a choice. A binary decision that would determine the fate of the species. But how to choose? How to ensure that the decision was truly collective, truly representative of humanity's will? The United Nations, revitalized by the entity's message, stepped forward to facilitate the decision-making process. A global referendum was proposed, a digital vote that would allow every person on Earth to express their preference. The choice was simple: accept the entity's guidance and embark on the path of transformation, or reject it and face the unknown consequences. The proposal was met with mixed reactions. Some embraced the idea of a global referendum, seeing it as a democratic way to determine humanity's future. Others dismissed it as a naive and impractical solution, arguing that the masses were too easily swayed by emotion and misinformation. The debate raged on, fueled by fear, uncertainty, and distrust. Conspiracy theories flourished, claiming that the referendum was rigged, that the entity was manipulating human minds, that the whole thing was a hoax. The world was once again on the brink of chaos, divided between those who embraced the entity's message and those who rejected it. Despite the challenges, the global referendum moved forward. Voting booths were set up in every country, and online platforms were launched to allow people to cast their ballots remotely. The world watched with bated breath as the votes poured in. The numbers shifting and changing in real-time. As the final votes were tallied, the results were clear. A majority of humanity had chosen to accept the entity's guidance and embark on the path of transformation. The decision was made. The fate of the world was sealed. But even as the referendum results were announced, a group of dissenters refused to accept the outcome. They believed that the entity was a threat, that its guidance would lead to humanity's enslavement. They vowed to resist, to fight for their freedom, even if it meant destroying the world in the process. The stage was set for a final confrontation, a battle between those who embraced the future and those who clung to the past. The choice had been made, but the consequences were far from certain. The world was about to enter a new era, an era of transformation and uncertainty. The dissenters, a coalition of rogue nations, extremist groups, and disillusioned individuals, launched a coordinated attack on the world's infrastructure. They targeted communication networks, power grids, and transportation systems, seeking to plunge the planet into darkness and chaos. They believed that by disrupting the entity's influence, they could reclaim their freedom and restore the old order. The attack was swift and devastating. Cities were plunged into blackouts, communication lines were severed, and transportation systems ground to a halt. The world descended into anarchy, with violence and looting erupting in the streets. But as the dissenters wreaked havoc on Earth, something extraordinary began to happen. People who had embraced the entity's message started to exhibit new abilities, new powers. They could heal the sick, control the elements, and communicate telepathically. They used their abilities to protect the innocent, to restore order, and to fight back against the dissenters. The battle between the dissenters and the enlightened raged across the globe, a conflict between darkness and light, chaos and order. The fate of the world hung in the balance. As the battle reached its climax, the entity intervened. It amplified the abilities of the enlightened, empowering them to unleash a wave of energy that swept across the planet. The energy neutralized the dissenters' attacks, restoring order and stability to the world. But the energy also had a transformative effect. It awakened the latent potential within every human being, unlocking new abilities and expanding consciousness. The world was forever changed. The cosmic entity, having fulfilled its purpose, began to withdraw. The lunar signal faded, and the hidden structure on the moon fell silent. The entity had set humanity on a new path, a path of transformation and evolution. It was up to them to choose their destiny. In the aftermath of the conflict, the world began to rebuild. New societies emerged, based on cooperation, compassion, and understanding. The old divisions faded away, replaced by a sense of unity and shared purpose. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge, and it had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. The future was uncertain, but it was filled with hope. Years later, the world was unrecognizable. The scars of the lunar signal event remained, but they were overshadowed by the remarkable transformation that had taken place. Signal sickness was a distant memory, eradicated by the entity's energy wave. The world economy had been rebuilt, based on principles of sustainability and shared prosperity. New technologies had emerged, powered by the awakened potential within humanity. But the greatest change was in human consciousness. The ability to heal, to control the elements, to communicate telepathically, was now commonplace. People lived in harmony with nature, respecting the delicate balance of the planet. The old divisions of race, religion, and nationality had faded away, replaced by a sense of global citizenship. Dr. Eris Thorne and Professor Evelyn Reed, now revered as visionaries, continued their research, exploring the mysteries of the universe and seeking to understand the entity's purpose. They established a new scientific institute, dedicated to the study of consciousness and the exploration of human potential. Dr. Anya Sharma used her newfound abilities to heal the planet, restoring damaged ecosystems and mitigating the effects of climate change. Dr. Kenji Tanaka dedicated his life to understanding the human brain, unlocking its secrets, and helping people to reach their full potential. The world was not perfect. Challenges remained, and new threats emerged. But humanity was better equipped to face them, armed with its newfound abilities and its collective wisdom. The lunar signal event had been a crucible, forging a new humanity from the ashes of the old. One clear night, Eris and Evelyn stood together on the Chilean mountain where it had all begun, looking up at the moon. It hung in the sky, silent and enigmatic, a constant reminder of the extraordinary events that had transformed their world. "Do you think it will ever return?" Eris asked, his voice filled with awe. Evelyn smiled. "Perhaps," she said. "But whether it does or not, we are ready. Humanity is ready." They knew that the universe was full of mysteries, and that the journey of evolution was never-ending. But they also knew that humanity had the potential to overcome any challenge, to reach for the stars, and to create a better future for all. The lunar signal event had been a wake-up call, a reminder of the interconnectedness of all things, and humanity had finally answered the call. The future, though uncertain, was bright with possibility. The long night was over,